So, guys, temporary visitor visas or any other temporary visas like a study permit, work permit, visitor records or anything else is generally affected by visa refusals. Now, just like any other Western country, Canada also has a quite high refusal ratio, and so is the tension or the concerns that is there in the heads of people who are applying. So we do get a lot of questions every now and then that what could be the best practices whenever applying for a temporary visa for Canada. Now, while today's video will specifically focus on visitor visas, now how to avoid a visitor visa refusal whenever applying for a visa for Canada, but I think personally you can use these principles and you can replicate them in other temporary visa applications also. For example, a study permit or a work permit in addition to the other requirements, because all of those applications do have a very specific set of requirements. So hoping that you will meet those, you can follow these in addition to those specific requirements, and hopefully you will be able to avoid a visa refusal, temporary visa refusal. And today's video we will talk about 8 specific inputs, so 8 different things which you can do, and this might be able to help you in avoiding that visa refusal. If you're interested, please be sure to watch the video till the end. My name is Sahil. So, guys, welcome back once again. My name is Sahil and I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and I practice here in Ontario. My office is here. If you have to get in touch with me, my number is on the screen and the details are there in the description box. More than happy to connect with you. Before we proceed any further, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, because we talk a lot about Canadian immigration. And if you are an aspirant moving to Canada, then this is the channel that you must be subscribed to all the time. So, guys, we are discussing how to avoid temporary visitor visa refusals. And like I said, we will give you 8 best practices that we as Canadian immigration professionals, while we are authorized by, under the laws of Canadian immigration to practice, to give services to our clients, we practice these important, best measures or best practices, as you may want to call it. And, probably you could also take away a few important tips. And if you are doing a self application, or if somebody else is also doing it, you could probably focus on these and make sure that your next application for Canadian visa is a good one. Now, like I said, while we are discussing visitor visa specifically today, but you can probably apply these specific inputs in other applications also. For example, a study permit or a work permit, because those are also temporary applications. While those applications have very specific set of requirements, like a study permit would have an offer letter, etc., like money and all, whereas a work permit could have separate set of requirements. You could follow these best practices there as well, and this would, if not detrimental, would definitely help in building up a better case. Now, guys, specifically talking about the visa refusals in visitor visas, in our experience, we have seen that showing a higher amount of settlement is, so basically showing a higher amount availability for your travel is always the first best practice. Now, if you remember, very recently the Canadian immigration minister talked about cost of living in Canada, and he said that for an individual to live in Canada for a year, the average expenses would be going upwards of $21,000 or more. Now, as a best practices, before this news came in, we used to show, if we talk about Indian funds, we used to recommend our clients to show at least 8 to 9 lakhs, which would convert into, say, approximately 14 to 15,000 Canadian dollars. Um, After this recent announcement, we have started recommending our clients to show amounts upwards of $21,000 or more. So you could convert that amount into your local currency. So convert 21,000 Canadian dollars into a local currency, and then try to show those funds in your bank account. That's always a best practice. Now, it's never a basic requirement, like you can show less also, you can show more also, but this is the recommended amount. The important factor here is that what are the documents to support this, what could be the, the length of funds that you would want to show, like the timeline. And the next would be, how to avoid any specific within these funds. So like the fund itself is a very important topic, so I will dive more into that now. 90 days to 180 days of your banking statements is generally recommended, along with other important documents like proof of your property or your, asset ownership. Could be, tax returns. That is very important, again, to just to show that you are following the rules and the, the laws of the country, and also that, you are an employed individual or a self-employed individual as per your, the showing that you do. But you should definitely have that bank balance and show a bank balance certificate also if possible. Then the important factor here will be that always get your, your proof of funds, your assets and valuations certified by a tax professional, for example a CPA or a tax accountant, somebody who's at a good, a recognizable level. That really helps the officer to get validation of the reports. Now, while we have seen immigration officers reach out directly to banks and verify letters, if you try to give them these third party verified letters, that is only going to help the officer in gaining more insights into your application. So you could probably do a good asset valuation certificate, income asset valuation, stuff like that. Now, what you want to show is a different ball game altogether, but that is something that you would want to show to start with. Important to note here is that if in the list of banking transactions, if there are any surge of funds, for example any cash deposits, any sudden surge of funds beyond your salary, the regular salary, then you should be addressing that, because the officer at the end of the day is trying to identify that you've not taken any loan to show these high proof of funds, right? So always address those. If there are, any receipts, invoices, any gift deeds to show, anything like whatever is the reason, always try to address those surge of funds. We have specifically seen GCMS notes, ATIP notes, saying that the officer had concerns on such spike of funds. And the, because it was a foreign national, they did not have the onus to send out, request to justify, and hence the officer refused it. So you should have those funds. Ideally, the amount of funds would be, the amount of funds that you show would be or should be enough to cover your flight tickets. Nowadays flight tickets are really expensive, so take into that account your hotel expenses, your travel expenses, your food, accommodation. So if you have a longer duration of stay in Canada, then you should have more funds. Whosoever is trying to support you, all of that is also going to be very important. But yes, showing higher proof of funds will definitely be helpful. The next thing to show is your settlement in home country. Very important to note here is that settlement to in your home country, for example, how long you've been there, your legal status in the country, your house, all of that. So settlement would also include your job, your education, like how well settled you are in your life. It's not about how much money you have or assets, but basically what you're doing in your country. Say, do you have a job, do you have a life, do you have your own settlement? This would also be connected to something known as ties to your home country. So both of them, go hand in hand. But yes, a settlement would more likely be like a job, and something that you do on a usual basis, and something that you have to do in your life. So yes, your education related documents, your job related documents, your pay stubs, if you can get a leave letter, leave approval letter that you're going to travel, all of that will play an important role. um, the ties to your home country are again, variable. Now for married people, you could show that if you're applying alone, then you could show that your spouse or your kids are back home, and you're applying by yourself. That's an extremely important, aspect of an application. There could be assets back home, property, commercial property. You could very well include your job as well in this, but it's more about your assets that you have back home, that in case you will have to go back and fetch. Okay, so the Canadian government, what they're trying to do is that they're trying to find people, or they're trying to identify that you will not overstay in Canada, and there is no reason that you're disconnected from your home, and the fact that you will, like, there is nothing back home to go back to. Okay. Now, I very often get this question that Sahil, okay, we are a family of four, three, two, whatever, like me, my spouse, and my kids. We all are traveling to Canada. Then what do I show as funds? Like, I don't have a house in Canada. What do I show as funds? So that's a very important question. Please note there is a case law. You can address that. That specifically says, the federal court specifically says that um, if the family is traveling together, that is no reason to believe that the family will not go back, or the person or the traveler would not go back, because then that would take away the whole purpose of traveling, right? Like, then if we go by what the officer says, that means that the family will never be able to travel to any foreign country, right? So there is a case law, there is a federal court appeal that was allowed, and you can very well refer to that. So if you get, by any chance, if you get a refusal because of that reason, do address that refusal with that particular case law, and mostly it should be helpful. Overall, the ties to home country are extremely important. Like I said, family members, and you could show your parents as well. Single person, single child to take care of the parents, that is also helpful. Your family, friends, years of settlement in the country, job, business, all of that plays an important role. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that you need to be showing, these documents, proof that you have those ties. So it's not just you telling on a piece of paper that, okay, I have a house, I have a car, I have this, that. No, but you have to provide proofs. So provide a proper header to it, and add documents, and then justify that, okay, I have these ties back home. Okay. Next would be the affirmation of return, or so basically the officer at the end of the day, because it's a temporary visa, the at the end of the day, the motive or the whole objective of the officer is to see, or to make sure that there are all the right actions, or at least recommendations in the application, that the person will be going back. These affirmations could be in word as well, could be based on a travel plan. So basically, what we're trying to do today is give them all actions, or all information messages, to make sure that you are returning. And you could do that in your application as well. So you could give specific words or reason to return, that what is there back home, maybe your job, maybe your settlement, maybe you're coming to Canada for a business or a trade purposes, and the fact that you're going to reap the benefits when you go back home, right? So that is also an affirmation of return. So what are you going to take away from this visit? Maybe memories, maybe family reunification, maybe business, maybe trade, anything that you will go back, and then you'll try to apply it or use it in your life. Okay, so that is the affirmation of return that we are talking about. Always bring that in your bring that up in your application, and it'll be helpful. Next would be, again, affirmation of return is directly connected to your travel history. While I am very certain here to say that travel history solely does not play, it's not like anybody who's not traveled to anywhere else cannot come to Canada. It is not at all like that. So it does not solely play the only role, but it does play an important role in satisfying the officer that, okay, the person has visited a couple of countries, he has a decent travel history, and the fact that he's more likely to replicate the same good travel history if he comes to Canada as well. For example, if you've had a couple of short trips to US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, then Canada will also be sort of rest assured that, okay, since the person has gone there, come back, mostly he'll come to Canada and go back. Okay, so that's the role that travel history plays. Although, again, there is a case law that if there is no travel history, it does not mean that the person will not return. Okay, so don't be worried about it. Like I said, it's not the only thing that will help you, but it is one of the things that will definitely be helpful, and it also plays an important role in letting the officer think that the affirmation of return is there, and the confirmation is there that yes, he's highly likely to go back. Okay. Next is your purpose of visit, and this is extremely important because you will see that a lot of visa refusals happen under this umbrella. Now, Purpose of visit is a broad topic. What the officer is looking at is that you, as a traveler or visitor, should have the proper reason or a plan or an itinerary as to what you will be doing in Canada, which institution or person or event will you be attending, how will you be staying, where will you be staying, who will be funding the stay, what will you be doing here, maybe relocation, or maybe travel, maybe business, maybe event, maybe a music festival, or could be a conference, or could be just visiting family reunification, right? Anything like that. So the purpose has to be outlined along with the itinerary. Now, the officer should know that, okay, I am going to be visiting Calgary for 3 days, then going to Banff Trail, then going to Edmonton, and then going to GTA, going to be visiting Niagara Falls, and then I'll be heading back. Now, in the name of itinerary, just don't go on making GTA, which is Toronto, then Vancouver, then Calgary, then Nova Scotia. Then that will look fake, because Canada is a big country, it is expensive, and then you'll have to show more funds. And in the name of traveling, you cannot just show a 2 months travel, because then who will take care of your job back home, right? So, like I said, it has to be a proper mix of reason to travel, um, and traveling resources, where you will you be going, and who will be there. So an invitation letter will also play an important role. For example, if you get that under oath, under notarized conditions, person who's inviting, for example, family member, could be citizen, permanent resident, that also will play an important role. So the more you're trying to do in this, the better it'll be for you. Okay, don't overdo it. Like I said, don't just overdo with everything, but a sweet spot has to be hit whenever you're doing a purpose of visit. Okay, very important. And the last thing that I would add is quality of documentation. This is extremely important, because everything has to be presented well to the officer. It has to be under readable formats. Now, for example, the officer should be able to comprehend what you're trying to say. For example, letter of explanation, the way you present the documents, the order of the documents, the headers, and the way you're trying to, for example, something as basic as a scan copy. Now, if you put it on a bed sheet, or maybe floor, or maybe on a bed of roses, and you try to click a photo with the roses in the background or the bed sheet in the background, it's going to look very bad reputation of the file. Kind of documents, maybe a page going left, going right. No, that is not good. You have to be professional, right? Have to The documents have to be originals. Avoid doing copy of original. Avoid doing that unless you don't have access to that. It has to be a proper scan, uh, put up in proper order with the right letter of explanations and form. The questions have to be answered properly. If you miss anything, if you try to lie or misrepresent, there could be potentially a 5-year ban as well. So be very specific, and present a good quality of document, because that will make or break your file. And if the officer is not able to understand what you're trying to say, then God help you with your application, right? Overall, this is the whole set of inputs that I have for you today. Because, like I said, putting up a temporary visa, including visitor visa. So visitor visa happens to be one of the toughest applications, just letting you know, because um, people think that it is just a visitor visa. But what I have to say is that visitor visa is the toughest, because anybody can apply. There is no eligibility. For example, if you want to do a study visa, you first have to get admission into a college, pay the fees, then get a provincial attestation letter. So you cross all those hurdles and then reach the stage of application. Same goes for work permit, job application, LMIA, months of processing, you IELTS, resumes, blah blah. Then you reach a stage where you can apply. Whereas a visitor visa is random. Anybody can apply. Like anybody sleeping in a country wakes up, says, okay, I want to visit Canada, let me apply. That makes it all the more difficult. all the more susceptible to more checks, more verifications, and high risk of refusal, because just like that, the immigration department would be receiving tons of applications and they have to be more strict because they cannot just let everybody come to Canada. So they need to be very specific. They need to control the volumes because these are potential refugee cases, potential refugee claimants, people going illegal in the country. So they have to be very, very specific. Hence, um, whenever you do visitor visas, whenever you do, temporary visas, be very specific and good with your documentation. Make sure that you follow the best practices, and hopefully, fingers crossed, you will get a visitor visa and you get to come to Canada. Guys, I hope the video today was helpful, gave you much insights into what are the best practices of applying for a temporary visa and the best practices on how to avoid visa refusals. Guys, I hope the video was helpful. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video, share with your friends. This will give us a confidence to come back to you again. Wish you all the best, and I really hope to see you soon in Canada. All the best.